Warning, this podcast contains discussions of sensitive topics that some listeners may find triggering. Listener discretion is advised.
Jazzcast Pros.
Today's guest shares the decades of struggles with food addiction, from sneaking food to digging through the trash. She eventually learned what she truly needed to heal from the inside out. And through sharing her story, she desires that you too will heal from the struggles and challenges that you're currently facing. Welcome to Fearless Fridays with Maryann, the podcast to help you get unstuck, heal your inner child, and reshape your future. I am your host, Maryann Rivera-Dannert, and with over 10 years of experience as a coach, author, speaker, and owner of MRD Empowerment Solutions, I use my personal life experience with trauma, healing, and rediscovery as a catalyst for personal growth. My mission is to empower you to discover and unlock your full potential, paving the way to a life marked by freedom and balance. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff and find the strength within to rise above. And if you are someone that has struggled with food addiction, eating disorders, and things of that nature, our next guest is someone that you definitely want to tune into. So without further ado, let's bring her on and get started. Hello, how are you?
Wonderful. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's get started. Tell us your name and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Bracha Goetz. Well, I'm the author of 42 children's books and one very candid memoir for adults about my journey developing food addictions and then healing from them. And I didn't exactly write the book. I took excerpts from my diaries and journals and letters. So it's kind of like a documentary that you experience it with me.
Wow, that's amazing. So take us back to the very beginning about you developing the food addictions, realizing that something was broken, and how did that healing process look like?
More than the word broken, I would say, okay, broken, maybe missing. Something was missing. And I didn't know what it was. So I started my diary at age 12. And you can see it's so gradual. You see the confusion of growing up, like reading women's magazines, and they talk about go on this diet and lose weight. And then the next page is a recipe for strawberry shortcake, and constantly confusing messages. So like you don't know how to be. I didn't think about these things much, but it just got into my consciousness more and more as the years went on as a teenager. I remember when I lost weight, there was like a big reaction, like suddenly like people were interested in me that weren't before. It was like a real change, and then, okay, I'll just keep doing this, and the crazy dieting, that was too much. Then there'd be really terrifying binges when I would feel completely out of control. I would say that was even more frightening than the dieting, because it was just so endless. And it had nothing to do with physical hunger. All of this went on. I ended up going to study at Harvard just because I wanted to learn about the wisdom of life. I wanted to know why life was worth living. I wanted to really gain this kind of knowledge. So I just studied. I was studying everything, and I ended up getting in there, and I became like the expert on eating disorders. And meanwhile, I'm getting sicker and sicker, and I'm writing papers on it. And I had this chapter published in a book, even as an undergraduate, that's still being used. It was like I was doing groundbreaking research on this as I'm really suffering within. Yeah. Then I went on to medical school. During my first year of medical school, I would say that looking like a success, gone to Harvard, going to medical school, and inside I was a mess. I was more miserable than ever. Yeah. And with an addiction, you do things in secret. So nobody has any idea what you're doing. They don't see you. And my behavior was getting more and more bizarre. So I remember I visited a psychiatrist that year in medical school. He was like on the staff to help the medical students. And I told him like all the crazy things I was doing. I finally divulged it to someone. And he said, the funny thing is about you, he said, I feel like there's something that you're searching for spiritually. And if you just find that, that would like help you solve your problems. And it was amazing that he said that. Like,
Wow.
I'm Jewish. He was a Japanese psychiatrist, like totally a different religion and culture. And yet he could see this about me. So that summer I went to Israel for 6 weeks and I didn't come back. I found what I was looking for, and I found like this deep spiritual wisdom that filled me up. And then there was no longer a need for the addictions. So what I am sharing with other people now is that when we fill our souls, then there's no longer, you see, with addictions, there's an emptiness, there's a hole, and we try to fill it desperately with physicality. And it'll never fill that hole because it's not a physical hole, it's a spiritual hole. And what I fill it now with is gratitude, because gratitude is what fills us up, everybody from any walk of life. It's what we're here to do, to be grateful for all the gifts in this incredible garden that we're in. And once we gain that, then we don't have that emptiness anymore, because that's what fills us.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So you mentioned having like behaving in certain ways when you were suffering from the food addictions. What were some of those behaviors, and what makes you say that they were, odd, off, and things like that?
Oh gosh. People are shocked when they see me now. If people read the book who know me, that's the most embarrassing part. Everyone that doesn't know me, that reads my memoir, it doesn't embarrass me. When people now they see and they can't believe, because I'm very open in this. Like, I was taking from other people's food. No one knew who was taking the food. I mean, and then this is the most bizarre part. Taking from garbage. Food that was thrown away. Now, you might think that is about a low opinion of myself, but I actually, at the end of the book, I had this like epiphany. By putting the book together, I came to understand my journey. So it's kind of like a psychological mystery. What I realized is I was kind of redeeming what still had value that was being thrown away, because in a way I felt like my heritage was being thrown away, and I had to re-find it and bring out the value in it, and bring out the basis of it is about gratitude, and find that again, and then it became valuable. So I put a metaphor to what I was doing, the bizarre behavior I was doing, because actually with so many types of mental illness, when we act it out, we're acting out in a metaphorical way some type of pain that we're experiencing. It's a really interesting thing that I found. So that's how I see it now, the way that I understand the bizarre kind of behaviors. And truthfully, I didn't care about my life that much when I was at my lowest point. Like, I'd go to bars and people that were drunk would drive me back. Like, my life didn't matter because I didn't understand anymore what the value of life was. It became a gray world.
Yeah.
And now it's like the colors returned, kind of like at the end of The Wizard of Oz. That's what it's like when the colors come back.
I love that. So you are the author of 42 children's books. So what made you get into children's writing and illustration?
My goal was to write the books I wished I had as a child, books that can explain deep and wonderful concepts about life that I never learned. Books that explain that we're spiritual beings here for a spiritual purpose. This is what I wanted as a child, so I'm writing those books now for children. And also, I have books about healthy eating, healthy exercise, prevention of abuse, because in order to shine fully, we need healthy bodies as well. We have to nourish both our bodies and our souls.
Yeah, that's so true. Can you talk about what are some things that cause individuals to get into addictions?
Beautiful, beautiful question. We develop addictions because we feel there's a scarcity of pleasure in our lives. So when let's say we eat something, it gives us pleasure. Food is designed to be pleasurable. We experience the pleasure, and if we feel a scarcity of pleasure in our lives, then we just keep stuffing our faces because we want the pleasure to keep lasting. What we really want is not all that food. What we're really searching for is lasting pleasure in life. Usually people with addictions are very sensitive souls. We want to experience more pleasure in life. We recognize that. We recognize that sense of scarcity in our life. And without recognizing the abundance, without seeing it, it makes sense to develop addictions because we are trying to fill that hole that we feel. We're sensitive beings that are aware there's a hole. So that's how we try desperately to fill it.
So, what are some things that, you can tell to our listeners, to our audience, to be aware of, to be on the lookout for? And I know that you spoke about going to Israel and that you realized that something was missing spiritually. But what are some of the healing tools that you used to get to where you are today?
Exactly. There is something I learned that summer that changed my life. It's called the pleasure ladder. This is not coming from my head. It's coming from ancient mystical wisdom, and it's universal. The pleasure ladder has 5 rungs on it, like our hands have 5 fingers to show us we have the power to bring pleasure into our lives at any moment. It's not dependent on anybody or anything else. That's the amazing thing. Because when we have addictions, we feel out of control. We feel like we have no control in life. We don't trust life. This gives us back empowerment. We do have control of bringing pleasure into our lives. And the 5 levels correspond to the 5 levels of the human soul. The lowest level of the soul is the part that's attached to the body. So when we experience all the physical pleasures, the natural physical pleasures in this world, when we experience them with gratitude, that nourishes both our bodies and our soul. So that's eating natural foods, it's being out in nature, it's exercising, it's moving, it's dancing, it's music. All of these things, our bodies were designed to experience pleasure with all these things. When we do that, it uplifts both our body and our soul in gratitude. And that is just the lowest level. Going up from there is love. Now, love, you would think it's dependent on someone else.
Right.
But in this ancient mystical definition, it's focusing on the virtues of another. When we do that, we are filled with a warm emotional feeling. So even in prison, a person could think of a grandmother that once did a kindness for them and be inspired and uplifted. The person doesn't have to be there at all. Just thinking about the person gives you that connection, because when we're in active addiction, we feel disconnected, lonely, cut off, estranged. We need to bring connection back. First, we can connect to a natural thing in life. Secondly, to another being. What brings even more connection? Doing something meaningful, good and meaningful. I was on another show, and the person said, at this point, he said he was eating a pizza and he wanted to finish the whole thing. He was miserable, sitting by himself. A neighbor knocked on his door, and after he had had 2 slices and he was about to eat the whole thing, he went and he helped his neighbor. He came back. He did not want any more pizza. He didn't need it anymore. What happened? He had been able to help someone for 2 minutes. He felt grateful to help someone. He had a connection. He could put the rest of the pizza in the fridge for another day. It's an instantaneous change. Any of these pleasures, and that's what we need. This brings us lasting pleasure. Even higher than doing something meaningful is surprising. It's creativity. When we put a unique part of ourselves into the world, we go into a zone. We don't feel like eating or sleeping. We are on such a high. We don't feel time passing when we're being creative. That's even a higher level of connection. And the highest level is called transcendence. It's when we lift the veils of separation between us and everybody, everything, and the source of all energy, so that we can feel that flow. And we're just a channel of the flow in the world of positive energy. We feel that under a starry sky, and it stays with us forever. We know we're a part of a greater universe. All of these are available to us at any moment. And the only price we have to pay is gratitude. That is it.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So in regards to your memoir, what made you share, your story publicly, especially when individuals that know you, it still causes you to feel a little bit embarrassed by your behaviors in the past?
Yes, it's probably the same reason that you're doing this podcast. When we help other souls to shine, it gets our own soul shining. If we can help other people through our struggles by sharing our struggles, it's worth it to us.
Yes.
There's nothing like that integrating feeling when we know our challenges can be used to help others. And of course, it helps us at the same time.
Yeah, that's so true, because we often think that we are the only ones going through something until we give it a voice and we start talking about it. And then you start hearing about, individuals, friends, family, neighbors that have experienced some part of what we have struggled with.
Exactly. That's the whole purpose of this wonderful podcast. It's so valuable.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So you are on the Fearless Fridays podcast. How are you living a fearless life?
I guess anytime I feel fear, because fear definitely still enters my life, I try to replace it with a feeling of gratitude. Any moment that we're feeling gratitude is a moment we're not feeling miserable or feeling fearful. We can't hold those two emotions at the same moment. So I just encourage people to keep adding those moments of gratitude to their lives.
So what are you working on, and what else do you have, happening in 2024?
I'm creating many more books. I'm loving it. And I also want to tell people you can download a beautiful chart of the pleasure ladder from my website to put on your fridge, on your cupboard. If you ever feel like overeating, and we all have that feeling, it's understandable, it's natural. Just look at the chart, and it will remind you there's so many other things I could do this moment to bring more pleasure into my life. So to overcome a habit, we need a greater or more lasting pleasure to sub in. We just got to pour more joy into our lives, and that's through gratitude.
So speaking of your website, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about you and download the Pleasure Ladder?
Yeah, it's www.getzbookshop.com, and you see how to spell my name, Goetz, Goetz. So www.getzbookshop.com.
Any last parting words as we get ready to wrap up?
I tell people that have a problem with overeating, identify what brings you more pleasure than eating. Like on my 600-pound life, they say the same exact thing. This is the only thing bringing me pleasure. That's it. Fill your life. There are so many other ways to bring pleasure into your life. We got stuck there, but there's so many other ways. So free yourself and bring more pleasure into your life through joyful gratitude.
Thank you so much for sharing part of your story and for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. If you're not already following us on social media, come join the Fearless community at MRD Empowerment Solutions on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website, MaryannRivera-Dannert.com. I'll catch you next week with a new episode, and remember that you are a priority and you matter.